It's two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all? Yeah, Kevin, geez, yeah, again, it's just so great to be back with you again. We said, someone almost 10 years since we've connected before. And it's funny how you've got that deeper, I don't know, I look at it as soul connection with each other. And even though we didn't talk that many times, actually, even back then, but when there's a deeper soul connection, it's like, you just feel like you're still connected with people like that, right? And
absolutely,
like, here we are all these years later.
Yeah, there's a group of people that came through that, enlightened entrepreneur club that it seems like I speak to some of them every couple of years. There's some that I'm in pretty regular contact with, but most of them, it's like every couple of years we'll ping each other, and it's like the connection never went away. And I love that. I think when you have like-minded people like that, you have a tendency to create, like you said, that deeper soul connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So yeah, today we wanted to just chat about, two guys just chatting here, talking about what it's been like to be a guy, and
it's challenging.
Yeah, it can be challenging. I mean, I think sometimes the idea is, hey, the guy's got the easy part. We don't have to have kids, and all we have to do is put on the hard hat, get to work and provide. That's the easy part.
That's it. Go out and solve problems and make money, right? Isn't that
right.
what we're supposed to do?
Right.
Oh
And
my God. Yeah.
yeah, right. So many different stereotypes is for men and women, but we're here to talk about mostly about the men ones today and
Yeah.
get into those. So yeah, we all have these different things that we had growing up. Like for me, it was more, I don't know, there's a certain amount with my dad. He definitely, I found this out after he left the earth, but I guess he was picked on and bullied and stuff like when he was a kid, and he had a rough time in a number of levels as a kid. But he come across with a sense of being kind of macho or whatever a little bit. But he also had a very clear nurturing side he presented and everything. So he kind of had a mix. But overall in society, growing up, me, I was kind of more, I mean, 70s, 80s kid or whatever. And it's kind of like, it was all about being a real guy, in a way, still kind of coming off the John Wayne kind of era a little bit.
Sure.
So yeah, it's like no feelings. Let's play soldiers. Let's get into cars. Let's rack up the scorecard on how many women we slept with, as we got a little bit older, like things like that. And so we have like all these things, like these ideas of how we're supposed to be, but like most of us conscious guys, well, sometimes we've got into all that stuff, but a lot of us like had to know somewhere in like some of these stereotypes, even a younger age, I've been finding. So I'm kind of wondering like what it was like for you, like what expectations, like you thought, what it meant to be a man in your case. I could go on and on about mine, but like, I'm interested to hear about yours today, but what expectations did you get like from your family, from society and things, and how did those maybe impact you growing up?
Well, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. So, I turned 60 last year, and it really struck me how it seems to me it's become more difficult to be a man today than it's ever been. All those judgments and all those stereotypes notwithstanding, it's tough to be a man today. And it's like, how do I navigate that? But looking back at, what it was like growing up, my dad was born right at the tail end of the Depression, the Great Depression. And he had a very tough upbringing. And my dad, he was so I'm 6 feet tall. So I'm not short, but I'm not super tall. Like my son is 6'4", but my dad was only 5'6", and he had what a lot of people would call the Napoleon syndrome or small man syndrome. And he was tough as nails. He had this really deep, gruff voice. His parents came over on the boat from Italy, both of them. So, he had this macho, the Italian culture, men are super macho, and my dad was like that. And so this is a lot of what I heard growing up was, hey, you think with this, not with this. And what I learned as I got older was
Kevin's pointing, in case people hear this through an audio, like to his
pointing
head.
at my head. Yeah.
Instead of your heart, like the opposite of what we
exactly.
teach.
He would say, believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear, which today seems pretty reasonable. maybe less than half of what you see, because who knows, these days you can fake anything. But that said, my dad was just very in the world, and he was so angry all the time. I can remember, my dad's since passed, but one of my last, we had a very rough time together. I will say that. I always loved my dad. I didn't like him at all. And when I got out of the house, I couldn't get far enough away from him, that kind of thing. But in his later years, as he was going through his illness, and, I was the only son here to take care of him, I started to see a different side of him, but I remember the last time we had lunch together, I took him out to lunch because he was having a really good day. My dad had cancer, and we're standing there in line. We ordered our sandwiches and we're waiting, and he looks up at me and he goes, Kev, that's how he talked to me. Kev, you gotta help me. And I said, yeah, Dad, what's going on? And he goes, oh, I'm just getting so cranky in my old age. And I looked at him and I go, getting? And we both had a little chuckle about it, but he was like, yeah, I don't know. I go, Dad, you've been cranky since the day I was born. I mean, come on. But he was so driven by what other people thought and how he was supposed to be, and that whole stereotype. And I watched him railroad my poor mother. I mean, he never hurt her physically, I will say that. I want to be very clear. But emotionally, I mean, the guy was just downright abusive, and he was physically abusive to me and my two brothers. Never touched my sisters. So I come from a big family, a big Italian, Irish, Catholic family. Mom was Irish, dad Italian, and so, birth control was not even a thing in my mom's mind. So we had 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. But my dad was very different with the boys, and he wanted us to be men. You get out there and you guys, you take charge, and and it was just, and I couldn't be that way. Like growing up for me, you talk about, we've had some conversations about how do you embrace that feminine energy. Well, I saw power. My initial idea of power was power's abuse, because that's how my dad used it on us and on my mom. And I said, I can't be that way. I made what I call a key decision. I can't be that way because it doesn't feel safe. And man, I got no end of grief from my dad. He even asked my brothers one time when we were teenagers, like this was, nowadays people hear this and they go, oh my God, how? But he asked my brothers, is he gay? Because he's just so gentle and soft, and I never see him with girls. And it wasn't for a lack of trying, it was, it's just I had 2 very handsome brothers, one older, one younger, and I was kind of I was the ugly duckling in the middle. So I had a lot of girl friends, but no girlfriends, and so my dad just couldn't understand that. And, I was not his idea of what a man is supposed to be. And that was hard. That was hard for me to deal with.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the one thing you said in there that I ran into, not from my dad, but from others, was because I was sensitive, shy, introverted, primarily, that's how I showed up in the world. Then I didn't. Well, I've said this again and again. My sister got pregnant like when I was becoming a teenager, when she was just
Yeah.
20. For me, that was like young, and like she wasn't married or anything, and didn't even know who the dad was at first. Dad didn't want anything to do with her, the child. So it was like devastating to me. I was just like, I'll never do that to a woman. I
Yeah.
never, so never turned into, I better not even date anybody because, I have hormones and I don't trust myself, and I better stay as far away as possible. So I didn't date girls, and I didn't even say it. I was so like not wanting to be the guy that, makes all these comments about women. And
Mhm.
so I was so much like that, yeah, people would be like, well, what's he, gay or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I totally got that as well. And back then, man, the whole stigma is when
Yes.
the idea that you could be gay was like a big deal at the time, right?
Oh
Oh, you're
yeah.
gay, that's like really bad. And like that's just the way it was, like your era and mine. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that was pretty challenging. And so I can hear you with that. Now, how did you? I know, and then I would have, yeah, and then I'd be more the guy, like my friends would have girlfriends, I would become friends with their girlfriends, and I don't
Yes.
like, and then if there weren't that great of guys, I'd be almost like, why don't you date me? I'd almost be thinking in my head anyway, like,
Sometimes I would say it, and you know what they would say to me? Probably the
what?
same thing they said to you. You're too nice.
Right, exactly. I never did ask because I wasn't.
When did being a nice guy turn into the
I wouldn't
kiss
even be
of
that
death?
assertive to say you should date me, but
There were a few times where I did. I was brazen enough to say that, and I always got the same answer. Oh, you're too nice. And
yeah.
the kiss of death, when I did start dating girls in high school, if they took me home to meet their parents, if the parents liked me, they would immediately break up with me. I can't go out with you. My parents like you. You're too nice.
Right. That's
It
funny.
was horrible.
Isn't that interesting? That I
Yeah.
even see that with my girls a little bit sometimes. Like, well, if you like them, then yeah, I don't know. Then
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny how, and then as I got older, and as they got older, they started to realize, oh, it's not so bad having a nice guy because he actually cares about me.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it comes to our advantage, guys like us that are more sensitive or whatever we
Mhm.
want to call it, but like
Yeah.
come to more advantages as things, shift as we get older, especially back then. The
Yeah.
kids are like much more sensitive these days, and a whole different level. The
Yeah.
kids I see, we had 40. I mean, there were theater kids, but we had 40 theater kids over here for a party, and they're all loving up on each other. They're all in tears.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys are like out of the closet, and so they're say, "Hey, I'm gay," and all that stuff. But
Mhm.
it's like not all of them, like and they're all
Right.
like emotional, and we all love each other, and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And like that's just
It's
not part of
healthy.
my
That's
day.
the yeah, we didn't know. It's healthy to show your emotions like that. Because
Right,
what happens, when you're growing up and you're told, don't be emotional, think with your head and all that. And then you meet a woman and you fall in love and they need you to be emotionally available and you have no idea what that looks like.
right, right.
And for me, I will say this, I was very blessed with a mother who, well, she was my true north.
Hmm.
My mom's also gone. My mom died. Man, I'm older than my mom ever got to be. I said I turned 60 last year. My mom only lived to 57. She died of cancer at 57. And I was 35 and I was too young to lose my mom, but she was my true north, and she was compassionate. She taught me everything I needed to know about love, and I carry that with me every day. And so, a lot of my behavior was modeled after what I watched my mom do because it just felt better than what my dad was doing.
Right.
But it caused me a lot of problems. Like, you talked
Right.
about, your dad was picked on. Well, I was bullied incessantly, even in my own family. My
Mm,
brothers would gang up on me and, you
mhm.
know, call me the F word, and I'm not, not the one that starts with F and ends with a K. It was that other one,
Right.
and they would beat on me and gang up on me because I was so soft and sensitive.
Right.
So it was, even in my own family, I felt ostracized because I embraced that side of me at a young age. It took me a long time to find the balance between the two.
Right, right. So how did you do that? How did that kind of, I mean, it's over time, right? And
Yeah.
then journey, but like to try to share that a little bit for us. Like for me, I wanted to figure myself out because I had all this anxiety and
Mhm.
depression, and
Yeah.
I was just like, this is all a bunch of BS, is my mindset about the way life was during high school. And I just wanted to grow up and be done with the nonsense and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at. And I coped by getting into journaling and psychology and all this stuff. So it's kind of, what was your path to kind of finding out like the more of the truth of who you really are and
Mhm.
balancing masculine, feminine energy and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Well, and high school was probably the most miserable 4 years of my life. I will say that, actually till senior year. I met and fell in love with a incredibly beautiful girl. I couldn't believe she would give me the time of day.
Mhm.
Um, but from her standpoint, she couldn't stand young guys. They were just idiots, when we all were. But I was different in some way. I was more mature, and and it's funny because we were together for probably 2.5 years, and then she was my first true love, and then she broke my heart. And now fast forward, we reunited at our 40th high school reunion. Both of us were divorced, and now, back then I was so soft and she was very hardened by the world. She had had a difficult upbringing, and you know um, she was very she had a lot of masculine energy because she had that armor because she needed to protect herself from the world. And I was the only place that was soft enough for her to land, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I was no danger to her. But then over time that kind of got under her skin because she's like, well, why don't you stand up to me,
Right.
kind of thing. And it took me a long time, Dan. It took me a long time to figure this stuff out. I didn't even know masculine, feminine energy, right? And
Right.
as I went through my 20s and different relationships and into my 30s when I got married, um, I just started to sense that there was something, I needed to bridge that gap. And I was a very passive aggressive person.
Mhm.
So I was afraid to be too aggressive like my dad and really abusive. So I became very passive like my mom. And then occasionally I would flare up, and, things build, 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 as you know, with the passive aggressive personality. And then poof, you blow up over the smallest thing. And I didn't realize in the middle of that was that assertive place. And
Right.
to me, that's where masculine and feminine energy really combine to bring both their strengths to the table. And it's not that one is stronger than the other or one is weaker than the other. That's not the case at all, because what I've learned about femininity is women are incredibly strong, and I would say probably stronger than most men,
Mhm.
really, in a lot of ways, outside of the physical, because we have bigger bones, structure, things like that. But emotionally, probably far stronger. And they can certainly, as we would know, we're both fathers. The pain of childbirth is, we have nothing to compare it to. We have nothing.
Yeah.
If it was up to us to have kids, the human race would have died out centuries ago because we couldn't do it. So I
Mhm.
started to realize that there's this dance between the two, and how do I bring the most of my masculine energy without being macho, and
Mhm.
how do I bring the most of my feminine energy without appearing too soft and vulnerable and weak?
Yeah.
And it was a dance. I mean, it took me a long time. And it's funny because I think a lot today. uh I joke about the fact that, I always wondered what age you get to when you just don't give a damn anymore. And I think I hit it at 60, but I don't think that's true. It's just that I realized, what's my hill to die on? And I used to put so much stock and so much energy into what everybody else was saying to me. And now I just realize that there's a deeper guidance within me and around me that helps me to figure out what's right, what's wrong, what's best for me, what's best for the people I love.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That deeper listening is kind of how I look at it, sort of, right? Like this
Yeah.
listening, deep presence. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny that at some level, when I think back, and maybe you have this similar experience. Again, as a kid, I felt like, at times at least, like my recollection is, it may be faulty, but it seems like I was sort of somewhat fully enlightened as a kid, and then we get diluted, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I understand like compassion and love and sensitivity, and in a nice way, and then
Mm-hmm.
we want to, what held me back though was just a sense of expressing that, though, I would say, though,
Right.
like, how do I express the love and the profound depth that I'm experiencing with people without them thinking I'm really weird,
Yeah.
and so that was very awkward. And
Yeah.
that was always my big challenge, ultimately, was that sense of being deeper than, on the internet now we can find all kinds of different people, right? But you're like, oh my God, there's all these deep people out there. But when you're in, your own town or whatever, you might have been one of the deepest kids in the town, like,
Right.
that sort of thing. And it's like you feel like a totally out of place. And
Yeah.
like, this, I don't want to be a part of this. This isn't for me. And that's kind of was my path. And then being a guy, it's like, everybody's just like, what's your problem, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Well,
being.
I wasn't a star athlete in school, so that was working against me.
Mhm.
I was the kid who wanted to do well in school, so I was studying. I was getting straight A's. I wanted a scholarship to college. I grew up in a pretty poor family, and I knew that if I wanted to make something of myself, I had to get a better education. And so I really focused on that. I started working at 15 years old, because
Mhm.
times were different back then. In the 70s, it wasn't like it is today. So I started working. I would go to school from 7:30 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon, and then I would head to downtown Reno, and I worked from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. 5 days a week. I was working 40 hours a week, and then I'd go home, and I'd get home between 11:30 and midnight, and I'd sit up and do my homework
I was gonna
and get
say,
up
yeah,
and do
yeah,
it all
homework
over
on
again.
top of it, right?
Yeah. But I think that there were so many revelations to me. Like, I was always an artist too. So growing up, I loved to draw, and I tapped into a different part of my essence, I think, doing that.
Mhm.
And I was the person who I could be moved to tears by a beautiful painting, or by being out in nature. Or that's one of the reasons I love living in Reno. I mean, I am surrounded by incredible beauty here with Lake Tahoe, and even the desert. It's got its own spectacular beauty. But listen to a piece of music, because I was also a musician for a few years, and then as I grew older and got more busy, I stopped playing. But I love music, and music can move me to tears. And
Mhm.
I used to think there was something wrong with me because of it, and now what I realize, it was something very right. It was
Right.
just, how do I own that about myself and not make it wrong, you
Right.
know
Right. I mean, given your dad, like, yeah, anything remotely soft would seem completely, like, on a judgmental level, like,
oh yeah.
wrong. What's wrong with you? No,
Yes.
you're too
Yes.
soft. You're too
And
soft. Like.
yeah, and like, I loved football. I love sports. So I played sports casually, but not like in high school. I didn't play sports or anything like that. But I love watching sports. I love football, baseball. My passion is golf, and that's what I play. Because being an old man, I need something where I'm not getting hit. you
Right.
know, but you know, I've always loved those things, but my dad was somehow seemed like he was disappointed in me because I wasn't an athlete,
Mhm.
and so there was that. But we did have sports that would bring us together. And later in his life, and later, after I got into my 30s, we started going to football and baseball games together, and it really gave us a language to speak. And he
Mhm.
started to understand me a little more, so that helped.
That's so interesting. I mean, I feel like some percent, I don't know what it is, if it's half or whatever, like, and this is almost, I almost feel like I'm doing a confession right now. It's so funny. But like literally listen to sports talk and videos, all these videos on sports.
Yeah.
Hard because I know when I'm with guys, because most guys aren't into the conversations I'd want to really have the most, that I will be up to date on everything. I'll be able to say, yeah, DeRozan's killing it. Yeah, he's man, you see that triple double? And like I'll get just enough news. I don't watch all the games, but I'll just enough so that when I get in this conversation with these guys, I'll be able to say, yeah, I know all about that. And, like
Yeah.
like a common place we're able to talk to. I have family members that they're guys, they're like more prototypical guys, and they're like, there's not going to be anything else to talk to them about for the most part, for me anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
like, okay, and I'm not a house fixer upper guy or all this stuff. I'm not going to rehab and something, and we're going to talk about rehab projects or whatever. Okay, I got sports, like I pull that one out. And so that's kind of been a way I've kind of, I do have a natural love for sports, so it works for me still. It's not all because of that, but I know like that's part of what feeds it. I'm like, okay, I need to stay up to date, and probably consume more of it than maybe I would otherwise. So,
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, these are all these different weird ways, that we work with this. And just even hearing the people talking about sports, I feel like, oh, this is male bonding things. I worked with so many women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody in my family is like women, it seems like, there's not that many guys. So,
I got to tell you a funny story, just real quick. There was a woman that I worked for. This was probably, close to 20 years ago now. And we always remained friends. We both left the company that we used to work for, and I started my own business, and she went to work for another company. And a few years back, we started, picking up that friendship again and going to lunch and, just talking. And she looked at me one day right in the middle of lunch, and she goes, and it was just the two of us. And she goes, you know what? She goes, it is so great sitting here with you and having this time together. She goes, I really feel like I'm talking with one of my best girlfriends. And at first I was like, what did she just say? And I realized that she just gave me the best compliment she could have given.
Right.
She said, you listen to me, you reflect back what you hear, you don't try to fix the problem, you just let me be me. She goes, you're not going, well, you know what you should do, because that's that was how my dad raised me. Find a problem, fix a problem, right?
Right.
And one of the things I learned a long time ago was when my girlfriend or spouse tells me about her day or problems, the last thing in the world she wants to hear from me is, well, here's what you should do.
Right.
Because they already know what to do. They don't want your advice. They want your ear.
Yeah, that's so true. I do run into, I'm looking at, I'm like, oh yeah, me too, Kevin. I'm like that. I've had women that have told me like they just show up like with no makeup on, we go to lunch, something, or like they're being slobs and all kinds of. I'm like, I forget, so I remember this one person from China, as a grad school, was like that. And one time I'm like, and then she shared all these things with me. I'm like, why do you feel so comfortable to be so casual with all this stuff with me? She's like, oh, because you're Daniel, you're Dan. That's why. Like,
yep.
Oh, okay. All right. So
that doesn't tell me anything, but okay.
But it's like, I feel so comfortable around you. I feel like I don't have to, put on any pretenses at all. And that's something I think that a gift we both bring in. And like one of the areas like where I find it to be an issue sometimes with the sense of fixing. Like I do have a fixer inside of me for sure, and
I think we all do.
Right. And I mean, I don't know if that's really, again, it's all conceptual, really, sometimes like masculine and feminine, but the sense of that fixing on the male side, like we need to fix it, whatever it is. And it's like, when certain things arise, especially I know with my wife, like Deb, she, hey, this or that's going on or whatever. And I'll be like, geez, can you just leave me alone? I don't know how to fix it. Like I literally, that'll come up sometimes. Like sometimes I'm fine, I'll listen and everything and all that good stuff. But part of me, like if it's an ongoing thing, especially, I'm like,
I get this frustration, right? That male energy's in there, like, I just want to fix it. I'm so tired of hearing about it because I want to fix it and I can't fix it. And you're like subconscious, like you're pointing out how inadequate I am because I can't fix it.
Right.
I don't want you to talk about it. Right?
Isn't it funny how we immediately go to that as men? I feel so inadequate because I can't fix your problem.
Right. It is crazy.
Since when did that become part of our job?
I know, but it's
but it happens.
It's there, you know, whether I know better in my head or not. It's like a thing, right? Because you care, and it's like, what can I do? I can't fix it. Oh my God, this is making me feel so bad. And then it comes out as an aggressive thing, like, can you just leave me alone?
How, you know, it's like there's a softer way to ask that. It's this. How many years are we going to have this conversation? Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't softer. Never mind.
Exactly. Trouble, right?
Yeah. One of the things I've learned, because I have two daughters, and then my youngest is my son. But with my daughters, when they come to me with, and I'm grateful that they do. Like my middle daughter is 22. She'll be 23 this Friday, and she still calls me to ask for advice. And what 20-something kid wants anything to do with their 50 or 60-something-year-old dad? Most of them don't want anything to do with them. So, I'm really proud of the fact that I built good relationships with all my kids. But with my daughters in particular, I always ask them when they start in, I go, let me ask you one thing. Do you want my help, or do you just want me to listen? Because I want to make sure I know right up front what's going on here. You just want me to listen? Because I can do that. And I can be very, I can say, wow, that must really be hard, and whatever support you need, I'm here for you. But that must be really hard to be going through that right now. And so I've learned how to be more empathetic and less focused on the problem and more focused on who they are.
Right.
And I think that's been big. And I think without that feminine, vulnerable, connected, emotional side of me, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
So, that to me has been one of the, I can go hang out with my buddies and I can go shoot the breeze and have drinks and watch sports and and do all the macho things. But I can also hang out with, a group of women and just be completely immersed in that too. And I've always wondered, like, how can I do that? Sometimes I don't understand it myself, to be honest with you.
Right. Isn't it confusing sometimes? But that's what I've found is confusing for me, because I can be perceived as so gentle and such a beautiful space and all this stuff. But like you, I'm sure too, but I can, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, I mean, there are times when I'm just constantly interrupting them. I'm like, yeah, but wait a minute, boom, wait a minute, boom, wait a minute, boom.
That's your job.
Confronting things, because we're all spinning our stories, right? Like, but what? No, wait a minute. You just said 2 seconds ago, like,
but that's different. That's different because that's what you do. That's what I do too. We have to be, in order to be in service to them, we have to be direct enough to challenge their assumptions about things. And sometimes that involves interrupting the story because they get so ensconced in the story that they don't see outside of it. So I think that's a little bit different, but I'd be willing to bet you don't do that with your friends though.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't interrupt them. No, I don't, like, hey, wait a minute, boom, truth. Not at that level. It's a more intense but with friends, I'll challenge them too. I'll be like, well, wait a minute, dude, you're telling me all this, but that's not what I'm hearing. And it's different, but I still am like, that's maybe why I don't have a lot of like those kind of friends, because I'm probably too much for most people, to be honest. I really am. Like,
do we really want to go see Daniel? He tells us the truth.
There are some people that want that though. So so then that's precious when you find those people that appreciate that. They really would like that. And I think the thing when it's with guys, with women, I think it's a little bit easier sometimes, not always. But like with guys, it's like, I think again, like if they feel like like you're exposing a weakness of theirs, like, screw you, man, I'm not weak, get the hell out of here, right? Like that's what I've noticed. Like we don't, like for myself, like the guys overall, I'm including myself in that crowd. If I feel too challenged by another guy, I can either I might want to dig my heels in and okay, it's time to kind of, fight it out in a sense energetically, or it could be like, or I might, or I might just soften or whatever. But like, I also might just feel like I just don't want to be around you. You're not. You're a jerk. I want to be
right. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Oh, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. So we're all different that way. But it sounds like, one of the big challenges for us and for you is just really coming into an acceptance of more of the feminine, like really embracing that. Like we get a lot of good compliments and all that stuff, but like the sense of judgment on that's so strong by like whether it was our fathers or by some of the other guys or whatnot, like that sounds like one of the more challenging things that maybe you dealt with, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Yeah. One of the things that I used to be mistaken about when I started doing this work as a coach, the first thing I realized pretty quickly was I have to do the work myself for me before I can lead anybody else through it. Right. I mean, you can't take somebody else somewhere you haven't been.
Right.
And I used to think, oh, all this negative, because I was very negative toward myself for years. I hated I literally would look in the mirror and say, I hate you, to myself. Wow. And I look back on that now and I go, wow, I feel so bad for how he treated me. That wasn't fair. But it was because it was all that crap that had been built up in my head, all that judgment from my dad over those years of, you got to be more manly, you can't be soft, and you can't be weak, and you can't be this, and you can't be that. But I was all those things.
Right.
And I saw it as bad and wrong and a mistake. And I think that over time, as I started to realize that was actually something that needed to be nurtured, I could bring both those things to the table.
Yeah.
That's when I started to speak more kindly to myself. And that's when my world started to change. It was much less how other people treated me, and it was much more focused on how I treated me. And I thought, well, once I get rid of these negative voices, they're gone forever. I can kill them, right? Because we all think that. Like my clients say it to me all the time. I was so bad with that negative self-talk and it went away for a while, but now it's back. And I go, well, of course it's back. It never goes away.
I'm back, baby.
Yep. I'm back and I'm better than ever. But the only question is, do you listen to it? Right? That's the nature of it, is, can I hear that voice and just go, oh, well, thank you for that. That was interesting information.
Right.
I have this other path that I'm walking now, It's like, that's the place of, Jeffrey Van Dyke used to talk to us all the time about mastery, the student path versus the master path. And the master path is, I can walk this path of love and risk losing love and still walk the path of love and still be kind to myself and be loving to others, whether they love me back or not. Right. And that really was one of the biggest things that started to shift for me. Was I realized I was carrying all this negative talk from all these other people, and I just kept it going, but it never goes away. I just don't have to take it in and believe it anymore.
Right. This idea that you're supposed to, it's always this measuring up thing for all of us, men and women. You're supposed to be like this and like that. For women, it might be more like, get to your bikini weight, and you gotta be able to do, take care of your kids and work, 40, 50, 60 hours and be super successful in your career and do this and do
right. Yep.
Everybody, we all got these expectations that who knows, again, that's a whole nother big conversation where they all come from. They've developed for us. So I appreciate everything you had to share today. I thought it was a very, very amazing discussion, and I love the things you had to share, your experiences being a conscious guy, and there's so many common themes that I hear among the guys, and everybody's different at the same time. So So I really appreciate everything you had to share today. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me. It's such a privilege. It's so good to see you after all these years. I think the only thing different about me is I have just a little bit less hair.
Well, me too. Even though I still have hair, I've got quite a bit less too, I'm sure.
But outside of that, we still have good hearts.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men ultimately to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.